So this past week, we watched the documentary Booker's Place, A Mississippi Story. Now real quick, I have a couple of small details about the documentary. It was released in April of 2012, so it's only about 2.5 years old, and it premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. Now the director is Raymond Defiletta, who's pictured here on the left. Now before I go into Raymond Defiletta, and really Booker's Place in general, I want to touch on Frank Defiletta, who's pictured on the right. Frank Defiletta is Raymond's father, and he was also a director, as well as a producer back in the 1960s. Now at this time, Frank was a producer with NBC News. He primarily worked on producing documentaries for the popular evening news show Dateline. Now arguably his most important film is a documentary called Mississippi: A Self-Portrait, which was aired in 1966. Frank received inspiration for the film from an article about the injustices experienced by African Americans in Mississippi. So he decided to take his crew into the Deep South, and he found that racial issues were still deeply rooted into Southern culture. He proposed this idea to his executives at NBC and was approved. Just 12 years before this, in 1954, the Supreme Court handed out the decision in the Brown v. Board of Education case. This decision called for the desegregation of schools and paved the way for integration. Many Southern states opposed this decision and enacted laws in an attempt to circumnavigate it. Now back to Mississippi: A Self-Portrait. This is where we meet Booker Wright. Booker is a waiter at Lusco's restaurant, where he sings the menu. Frank Defiletta interviewed Booker Wright in order for him to sing the menu for the documentary. But after he finished, he spoke openly about his treatment from white customers and his life in their society. After the documentary and Booker's interview aired, there was no follow-up to Booker or to the town of Greenwood, where the documentary was filmed. Most people believe that because of the nature of the times, there had to have been some repercussions to Booker for his open words about the ways of life in the South. Raymond Defiletta, too, was unsure of what happened to Booker following the airing of the documentary, so he came up with the idea to produce a follow-up to his father's documentary. This is a part of what led to Booker's Place. The other part of the creation of the documentary comes from Yvette Johnson. Yvette Johnson, pictured here, is the granddaughter of Booker Wright. She came to the Defiletta family after finding the original film in search for answers about her grandfather. Yvette was attempting to unveil more info about Booker's role as an activist in the civil rights movement. She was trying to find out more about Booker's involvement in the local movement, which I kind of compared to National Treasure, where Ben Gates attempts to find out more information about his family's role in the American Revolution. Yvette is also a co-producer for the film. Alright, now back to Booker's Place. The documentary explores the town of Greenwood, Mississippi, which, as you can see, is located in extreme rural Mississippi. In fact, it's about 100 miles away from any major cities, and it is nicknamed the cotton capital of the world. The documentary starts off by explaining the treatment of African Americans at the time. It does this by showcasing the causes of 2 murders of African Americans, one for accidentally brushing his mop against a woman's foot, and another for accidentally touching a white man's car. Each of these men met a similar fate within days. Next, the documentary captures the reactions of current Greenwood residents to the original documentary. One of the town's older white citizens remembers spending time with his black surrogate mother in the field. Immediately, an elderly black man takes offense to this, as he criticizes the white man for romanticizing the past. This reveals that the pain of social inequality still remains to this day. The documentary then goes back and focuses on the sharecroppers' lives in the late 1960s. It shows their homes and how the landowners would promise better housing as an incentive for harder work. Finally, we are introduced to Lusco's, which is in the white district of Greenwood. Greenwood, like most towns at the time, had a very distinct black district. In fact, there was a railway track that was the divider between this and the white district. Now, Booker owned his own place in the black district, called Booker's Place, in which he worked during the days while waiting tables at Lusco's in the white district at night. Next, we're shown part of Booker's life-changing interview, which I would like to show a short clip from. This short video clip gives a glimpse of Booker's treatment as a waiter. In fact, it holds one of the most impactful quotes of the documentary, in my opinion, which is "All that hate, but you have to smile." It becomes apparent that Booker is not the content waiter that the white people of Greenwood thought, and that he actually feels quite trapped in their society. Following the airing of the documentary, the white community began to refuse his service. Booker then quit his job out of respect for the employers of the business that had employed him for so long. Not long after this, Booker's place was destroyed by white radicals. In fact, he was then hospitalized by a police officer. Later, he was shot and killed by Lloyd Cork, a black customer of his. The rest of the film analyzes Cork's trial. Most of the black community suspect that Cork was promised something by the white community, mainly the Ku Klux Klan, in return for shooting Booker. Cork, however, was found guilty and is still serving time in jail for the murder. The final segments of the documentary allow for Booker's family to speak their mind on the original interview. They agree that it gave Booker the stage to speak his mind and his heart. They know that he knew the possible consequences for his interview, but that he decided to give it anyway, because they believe that he thought somebody had to stand up and tell the truth.